Hey, what's up, everyone? It is Lucy here. We are at the IGN Happy Hour. We are joined today by Luke Riley and very special guest, Phil Spencer.
Thank you.
Now, Phil, thank you so much for joining us. I'll just give you a little rundown about the Happy Hour, and of course, anyone watching who is not familiar with our brand. This is a show, an hour-ish long show, where we have a very special guest and we drink beer. Now,
And we're happy.
And we're very happy.
Happy hour.
The idea is that it's very happy, very casual.
All the ingredients.
Unfortunately, for some reason,
well named.
but unfortunately for some reason, I'm the only one drinking beer today, which is a little bit of a disappointment. Sorry, guys, come on. Next time,
Okay.
next time, please.
Well, it's like 7 in the morning. People don't know that, but it's early.
Shh. Anyway, it's
a
an
beer.
absolute pleasure to have you.
It's great to be here.
Cheers,
Yes.
guys, cheers. Yes, we'll drink to your we'll drink to your water.
He doesn't have anything.
Yeah, I know.
I know. But Phil, listen, basically the idea behind this hour is not just to talk about the business side of what you do,
Okay.
but talk about you as Phil Spencer and what that means and where you've come from and all that sort of. We want
It's
to
going to
see
be the happy, 3 minutes.
the happy 3 minutes, right? Okay, that's really interesting. I want to dig deeper into that. Now, Phil, okay, you are the head of Xbox business at Microsoft Corporation since 2014.
Yes.
So that's
Sounds
a big
accurate,
deal,
yeah.
but you've been also at Microsoft for 27 years, is that
28
correct?
years now.
28 years.
Yeah, 1988.
Our research has failed us.
No, the time moves on.
Time
Maybe
does
they
move on,
did,
so it's
see?
my-
So-
Research.
June of 88, June 9th, 1988, programming intern at Microsoft, wore a tie my first day. Came in, realized that was a mistake, but yeah, I've been there ever since.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
So it's not the further up you get, the fewer ties you have to wear. You just don't have to wear ties at all.
No, you don't wear ties. No.
Cool.
But yeah, it's been good. It's been a good ride at Microsoft.
Okay, well, let me ask you about how you got there in the first place.
Microsoft.
Yeah, you've been there for a long time. It's a significant. I was
Longer
reading
than most of the people watching have been alive.
Well, that's true. I mean, I was reading your bio, and you worked on Encarta, and I was like, oh, that rings a bell. Like, where is that from? Why do I remember Encarta? And then I Googled it, and I was like,
You Googled Encarta.
I remember Encarta. That was a big deal for me back in the day.
Was it?
Yeah, I learned significant things.
It was like Wikipedia before Wikipedia.
It was,
Yeah.
exactly. But yeah, tell us how you got to that position, that very first position.
Okay, I was at the University of Washington, which is right across the lake from where Microsoft is. There was a guy, Tai Yi, who lived 2 doors down from me in the dorms, and his dad worked at a place called Microsoft. I had never heard of Microsoft. His dad came over to the dorms one time, and I was doing some game work on the Atari ST, if people remember what the Atari ST was. Mm-hmm. And they were getting ready to ship something called Windows 3.0, so a long time ago. And they said, we're trying to get sound and pictures and animations and all this stuff working on Windows. Can you come over for the summer and see if you can get this stuff working on Windows? I didn't know anything about PCs. For the tech heads out there, Atari was a Motorola chip, PC's an Intel chip. I didn't know anything about that. But I came over for the summer, so it was total. I was just hired in. There were 4,000 people at Microsoft. It was less formal than it is now. And I started, and I worked the summer, and worked like crazy. And at the end of the summer, it was a lot of fun. I learned a ton. They said, "Hey, do you want to stay?" And I finished school because I just drove back and forth across the bridge. But I started in a group that was working on some early multimedia, is what they would call it. So Encarta would have been one of those things. Cinemania, which is kind of like early IMDb. Dogs, Microsoft Dogs, we did that. But we were working on how we can move things around the screens. And then when we started Xbox, I ended up there because it was kind of a natural spot for somebody who had come into the company where I did.
So you were always interested in video games.
Yeah.
Before you sort of landed into the games sort of sector.
Yeah, I've been playing games. My dad's an engineer, and he brought a computer home, a Sinclair ZX81, and I would do little programming on the Sinclair, usually like text-based games. And I would usually learn to program based on trying to fix, because I would type in things and it wouldn't work. You'd get magazines that actually had programs for games and you'd type them in and then they wouldn't work, so you'd have to debug. and we ended up with a VIC-20, a Commodore VIC-20. I was playing games with my dad on the VIC-20. We graduated up to the Commodore 64, with Atari and an Amiga, and I remember my mom. I still remind her of this. She'd say, "You spending all your time on those video games? That's never going to lead to anything." And now I kind of point out, "See, Mom, it worked out."
I do that all the time, yeah.
Yeah, it's good.
My mum used to hide the AV cables
Yeah.
for the console, so I couldn't use them while she was gone, which was a lot.
I had to get certain grades or I couldn't play.
Yeah.
It's all those things I used to do. And
I do just want to stand up for the mothers who I feel have just gotten a bit of a bad rap.
Oh.
My mum bought me a Sega Genesis,
Your mom
actually.
rules.
So she was
Mom
very
rules.
not all mothers. That's I'm just going to interject
Hashtag.
that. Hashtag not all mothers.
I love that.
But please continue.
Well, so then I ended up through high school. I worked at a computer store in Vancouver, Washington called Computer Mart, and we were selling games. I was always in the middle of the gaming community. Been playing games forever. So the opportunity to get onto Xbox when I was at Microsoft when we started the original Xbox was kind of a dream come true. And now I do have the world's most perfect job. This is pretty exceptional. I know some people, maybe they get to their job and they think they've kind of earned it. I feel like I luckily fell into some kind of, through process of elimination, I became the head of Xbox, and I've had a great time.
Oh, that's fantastic. I do just want to, before we move on to your current position, I do just want to ask a very important question regarding Microsoft's sordid history. Phil, were you privately embarrassed about Clippy?
I don't know what Clippy is. I'm going to claim it. We can go Clippy, we can go Bob. Do you remember Microsoft Bob?
I actually don't remember Bob.
You don't remember Microsoft Bob? We have a product called Microsoft Bob. You don't
What
know?
did Bob do?
Come on.
What did Bob do?
It was a family shell, a home shell for Windows. You load it, it kind of had this thing that it looked like a house. So say you wanted to pay your bills. Instead of loading an app, you'd actually go to the den or the office physically, and it was like a metaverse. I don't know, it was Bob. But the box had a smiley face on the front. That's what it was. So I can trump your Clippy with Bob. We did Actimates. We did Barney. Do you remember the little Barney robot that we did that moved?
Yeah, I actually do. I mean, I'm not sure it made it to our territory, but I remember hearing about it.
You were missing out on not getting
we missed out on a lot.
The world was a bigger place back in the 80s and 90s.
That's right. Yeah. That's right. No, I mean, Microsoft and consumers always kind of been interesting, and I love the fact that we've been able to build Xbox at Microsoft. I like to say we kind of did it covertly in the beginning. Jay and Ed Fries and Robbie Bach and the guys, we were kind of down in what I call the gravel pits, because that's where our office was, and we were like below the radar, so we could just go work on our stuff, and as long as we didn't make noise, we were kind of left alone. Now, gaming is seen as something much more central to Microsoft, and which is great. In a lot of ways, it's great. But there are times I reminisce about being a little bit off the radar and just kind of being able to hide and do our own things.
Well, let's talk about you joining, you moving into the position that you are in now, which was 2014.
Yeah.
Where did you sort of, when you joined, when you sort of stepped up, where did you see the Xbox One, like back then? Like, where was it sitting at, and what did you want to change?
Okay. So prior to this job, I was running first party. So I was running our first party game development, doing the games that people are playing now, working with such a strong team. So my view on Xbox One was as somebody who was building games for it, right? There was a hardware team, a platform team, Xbox Live team, and we were building games. So as I was kind of watching both how it was selling, how it was to develop for, whether you could really deliver great games on it. I came to the position of head of Xbox as somebody who had probably built as many Xbox One games as anybody, because our whole portfolio was for Xbox One, and I play a lot of games on the platform. So some of the early things that I wanted, and really it was about the team that we wanted to, some of the decisions we wanted to make about where we wanted to go forward, was to make sure that our platform was really centered around what gamers wanted and game developers wanted. Because we knew if game developers couldn't build the best games possible on the platform, reach a lot of people, sell a lot of games, make a lot of money, that you weren't going to get the steady flow of great games coming through, and that's what gamers want. Gamers want a lot of games to go play. So some of the early decisions we made, like about giving people the option to not buy Kinect when they were buying the console, not because we had any hate for Kinect, it was just a price thing, right? Certain people didn't do anything with Kinect, so why should I pay to get Kinect with my console? Certain decisions about what was inside of Xbox Live Gold and what was out, things like backward compatibility of letting you play your 360 games on an Xbox One. This was all about what do gamers want to do, what do developers need in order to build their best games they can. And we've been on a couple-year journey down that path, and I feel really good about where the platform is right now.
What would you say over the past 2 years of content updates, of which there are regular ones?
Yeah.
What would you say the best improvement has been? The thing you've been most happy to see improve about the Xbox One post-release?
Yeah, so I play when I'm not traveling on Xbox almost every night, and I jump on my console, log into Xbox Live, and usually just jump into the first party that invites me to go play a game, and I'll go play. And I look at that Xbox Live community and how it's grown as one of the most critical things for our platform. We know this today. So many of the games are fostering community and what they go build because they're online based, and or they have content that they're adding digitally, but also just the community itself. And I happen to be a father of 2 daughters, and when I think about Xbox Live, and I've said this before, I believe the anonymous nature of what happens online doesn't always lead to our best human behavior. And when I think about Xbox Live, I want it to be a safe and inclusive place for people to play. And I'm really proud of the features that we're adding this fall around like clubs and looking for groups, which are features that allow people to self-select into the online community that they want to play. Because right now my choice is kind of I play with friends that I really know, who I've listed on my friends list, or everybody on Xbox Live, the kind of 50 million people that are connecting on a monthly basis. Well, now I can say kind of old dads that go to bed at 10, like that's my club.
Yeah.
So if I jump on a game at 9 o'clock, in an hour, I'm off because I'm going to sleep. And when I look to go play Destiny or whatever, or Forza Horizon or whatever I'm going to go play, I can actually build a party out of people who are in this. I don't know them, but we've kind of self-selected into these clubs that help me choose and curate the group that's out there that I want to go play with. No swearing, could be people that like a certain sports team. Like you can make a club based on anything that you want. As a father of 2 daughters, I say that because there are certain situations that happen in any online community where maybe I don't want my daughters in those communities. So you think about clubs and the clubs that they're in and they go play with. And I think our work in this area, we call it gaming for everyone. It's really trying to create a safe and inclusive environment for people to go play online. And I think that is something I'm very proud of. I think it represents the values of our team in Team Xbox, how we want to show up and things that we can do in the industry. We're early on, but I think we've had clubs in game preview for like a month, and I think there've already been 40,000 clubs created. And these are governed. Like you can kick people out if it's a no swearing club and this dude swears all the time. You can kind of comment on people. It could be families getting together, just want to go play online tonight. People graduated a certain year, whatever it is. But that's work I'm really proud of. And
can you sort of opt into sort of a few clubs?
Yeah.
So they sort of overlap?
Yeah, there's kind of 3 kinds of clubs. There's public clubs, which anybody can join, and just say it's somebody who enjoys Australian rules football, right? Or a team. Who's the local team that's in the finals? I don't know this. They told me.
The Swans.
Are they the ones in the finals? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I
think
totally
so.
knew that.
I don't know.
We're in New South Wales. We don't care about Australians.
Okay, so the Swans. You could have a public group. Anybody who's a fan of the Swans, and you have the logo that would be the Swans, and anybody can join those clubs, and they're kind of open. They're called public. There's private clubs where you actually have to say, hey, I want to get in. So if you'd have a club, I'll just pick because I used my daughters as my example earlier, like a women's only club. And you have to submit, like, hey, I want to be a member of this club. You have a governing board that's on for each club. You have like kind of a moderator who controls. They would select people to get in. There's a message board and a rating system. So if people aren't really who they represent that they are, that would show up. So those are private clubs. And those you can be kicked out of the club if people find that you're not. And then there's actually hidden clubs. So you can actually create a club because there's certain people who don't really want to broadcast online the clubs that they're a member of. So this is a hidden club. So you don't have to say that I like the Seattle Seahawks or whatever. And so those are the three kind of clubs that we see. You can be in multiple clubs. And when you're looking for a group, you can actually use that as an ability to say, hey, I want to go play online, and I really want people that are a member of these clubs and want to play at this time and play this game. And then the system will actually help you matchmake with people online. But that's just kind of that's an example of the work that we're doing in Xbox Live. You asked like what I'm most proud of, and I see the work that we've been doing. The other thing that's been great to see the reaction to is the Xbox 360 backward compatibility. And when we launched the Xbox One, we had a heated debate about backward compatibility. And some of the people that are smarter business people than I am, they would say, hey, well, we want people to go buy the new games. So you don't want to give them the ability to play the old games, because then they'll buy your new console and just play their old games. I kind of looked at it and said, your new games are either they're gonna live or die based on how they look and how they play. It's not the lack of the ability to play the old games that's gonna cause the new games to work. And we're not at 250 or so backward compatible games. I think we just launched a new Call of Duty this week on backward compatibility. And like when Red Dead launched, it was amazing. All the people were playing and it kept selling. And I'm really proud of the work that the team did, because it was kind of like ninja science to go make that work. And then just how people have adopted and continued to use that. The ability to continue to play your games is just something I think people should have.
Now, Phil, I don't want to linger too long on the past.
Okay.
But I must ask, when we're looking back to the Xbox One's very original vision and how it was sort of pitched to consumers at the beginning, and there was obviously a backlash to that, do you guys sort of sit around and sort of think, well, we were wrong, or do you sort of think maybe that wasn't just the right time, and that our vision is potentially something that will happen in the future? And it probably is where the future is headed. Mm-hmm. What's your sort of, how is it talked about internally?
I think it's a great question. The thing I would say was probably our biggest issue with some of the features that we had around the Xbox One launch was that we didn't give gamers choice to decide what they wanted to do. Like, we kind of forced a vision, or tried to, I guess, or that was the plan. Again, I was running first party at the time, but tried to force a certain end destination. Because we saw what had happened in like PC, and everybody was going digital, and you could see some features around gifting and sharing and all these things. Oh, okay, those would be really cool in console. And I actually, like you're saying, I believe in the long run those are really cool features on the console. But console has a long history of, I go buy a cartridge, I plug it in, and then that went to CD, and then when that went to DVD, like the physical medium. Unlike most other ways that people kind of consume content today, movies, TV, or whatever, physical media in console is important, and it means something. And I want to be able to resell it, and I want to be able to trade it easily. So I think the long-term vision, I think, had a lot of compelling features. But the fact that we were a little heavy-handed in how, maybe more than a little, in how that was rolled out to consumers, I think the backlash came because people want to feel like they're in control of their choice to use. So we obviously sell games digitally, and people can buy physical games, and it's your choice on what you want to go do. Things like Xbox Play Anywhere, which is the feature where when I buy the game for an Xbox One, I have it on Windows. If I buy it on Windows, I have it on Xbox. I can just decide day by day where I want to play my game. My save game moves back and forth. Like, that's a feature we can only do digitally. We can't do it with physical because I don't actually know that you own the disc.
Yeah, of course.
Right. So when you I don't have you'd have to do something weird like keep your disc in the Xbox One, and then wherever your PC is, we kind of go and check to make sure the disc's there. It's not that we don't like physical. It's when we built the feature, it's just impossible to implement with physical discs. So when I have that discussion with gamers today, they get it. They don't think I'm trying to force something on them. It's like, here's the feature that we like, here's how it works, and here's why physical, if you want to go buy physical, go buy physical. I don't have any problem with that. But we're also going to continue to innovate with the online features that we see around digital and physical features to make it the best platform we can.
Let's just touch a little bit before we move on to the future.
Yes.
I'm really, really intrigued by how you're supporting indies and how that's really evolved. And I've seen that evolve. And I think with the Xbox game preview, you've touched on something, I mean, obviously that Steam has been doing for a while, but that we're not really seeing other consoles. We're not seeing
other consoles.
We're not really seeing other consoles do. But listen, I think it's a really cool idea, and I think. Well, I want to hear about your sort of rationale behind it, and how you see yourself as supporting the indie scene right now.
Yeah, I mean, you hit it. Like how we come up with it, we look at what's working on Steam and we say, boy, that'd be interesting on console. I mean, Gabe, Scott, Eric, the team at Valve has been a critical part of gaming for a long time. They've been so important on PC gaming, and they've done a lot in fostering the community and what happens. I'm a big Steam customer. Their office is very close to where we are. We can see each other. There's a lot of DNA shared between the two teams. So in that case, it was just us looking at what's going on Steam and saying, okay, is there something that we can bring to console? This year we also started doing with Rocket League cross-platform play with Steam, so people can play, because we feel like you should just be able to play with your friends regardless of what platform they're on. And Steam has a lot of games that are shared with Xbox and letting those people play together. But the indie thing specifically, I think, is a real interesting point. I remember 7-8 years ago when there was a real meme out there that all games were going AAA. And you saw THQ went out of business, and there was this whole kind of discussion of, is the mid-tier budget game just going away? You're either AAA, big budget, or nothing. And kudos to Sony here. I thought they moved earlier than we did on embracing indie. We saw it at E3. They put indies on stage before we did. They did a nice job. Adam and the team there in working with indies. We had Chris Charla, and we had it going, probably not at the level they did, but we also knew we were focusing on Windows and console, and Windows specifically, just the opportunity for indies to span both was going to be critical. So if we said we can get this indie thing right across Windows and Xbox, we think we can open up a lot of opportunity for indie developers. Things like game preview, things like crossplay, which frankly Rocket League was one of the company. The Sonics guy just came and said, hey, this is just good for our games and our community, and going to support that. And I've been really proud of the work that Chris Charla and the ID at Xbox team has done. In fact, I'm going up to the arcade, which I know a lot of indies are around, and going to talk to them about what's going on. I get a lot of creative input from the indie developers, because sometimes they're more willing to take some creative risks, some technology risks, because they're not trying to feed 300 people working on a game. It's probably 30 people working on a game at most, and they can go do some things. So my game of the year so far is probably Inside, a game I love from the team at Playdead. And small studio, works a long time on getting their game exactly right. And those kind of teams have a lot of input to us as a platform holder on what we need to do to give them the best canvas for their art.
And I also think that things like Preview and Greenlight, they're providing a certain safety net that I think is important for these smaller teams. And I think that with recent examples that I won't name too loudly, I think it is important to be able to, if you're an indie team, to be able to put your game out there and make iterations and talk to especially if it's a very ambitious game, and talk to your audience and be able to get feedback before it's packaged and slammed on the shelf.
I agree with you. I think and I think we both know the game you're alluding to, but I will say, and I know that studio incredibly well. We've worked with them for years, even though we didn't work with them this time. But I look at things like We Happy Few, and We Happy Few is a game that's taking, I'll say from a creative standpoint, a real interesting view on the game that they want to go build. They came into game preview, they were able to get a lot of good feedback early on, and I know the team's busy iterating. Another great example is Ark. If you've played Ark, first launched on Steam and just a couple months later launched on Xbox. Does incredibly well on Xbox. It's usually in the top 5 games on Xbox Live. And that Studio Wildcard, the team behind that game, as you said, they're getting so much feedback, and frankly, let's be clear, they're also getting funding.
Yeah.
Right now, Arc I think is past that point where they need the funding, but some of these other teams, when they come out, they might have an idea. Are people going to be interested in this? I'd rather know before I spend the next 2 years of my life building it. So I'll put something out and get the feedback. You have Kickstarter, which is a little bit like, do I want to fund an idea? And then you get Greenlight and Game Preview, which is I can actually put my hands on a controller and feel, maybe not the full game, but what this feels like. I think that's something unique to games. You don't really see that in movies. You don't really see that in music per se. There's some things in music, but this idea that something unfinished can actually get in the hands of a core set of consumers and they can give you feedback, I think is great.
Yeah.
It's really interesting that. And I also remember that when you were chatting before about that discussion that come up a few years ago, it's like, is that mid-tier budget game disappearing?
Yeah.
And it feels to me that it's just the mid-tier publishers disappeared. Because now, if you're a studio and you want to build a game that's with a modest budget, but it's not just like 2 people. You know, you've got a decent-sized team.
Yeah.
You want to build a modest game. You don't need a publisher. You just go straight through you guys.
I think it circles back to your question about some of the early features on Xbox One, and it's not unique to us. Other platform holders have done the same thing, where this ability to go direct to the consumer. Like the reason we used to need publishers for those mid-tier games, because you had to go manufacture 500,000 discs, and those discs cost you a couple bucks each, and then you've got to find their way into the retail shop, and how do you do that, and who's the marketing team, and what does distribution mean? It's hard. Now you get your game to a certain state, you kind of hand a thumb drive with your game onto somebody else, not literally, but it's almost that, and that game can reach millions of people tomorrow. And I think that unlock that digital distribution gives for the indie developers, there's still a funding need, right? You still have to somehow get paid and eat and the things that studios like to do. But this idea that I need the facility of a publisher in order to get my game in the hands of consumers is something that is kind of gone away. I will say with indie, and I watch this, and we used to have the term Xbox Live Arcade, which I know some of my friends at US IGN are big fans of, Mr. Ryan McCaffrey, who constantly hammers me that I need to bring Xbox Live Arcade back. And arcade for us started with the arcade, like literally games that were reminiscent of putting a quarter into a machine and getting to play. And it moved beyond that. We saw that, Shadow Complex and some games that aren't really arcade-like games kind of came out of that program, Limbo. And then now when I look at indie, we do have some indie games that are literally 3 guys going and building a game. But you also have this mid-tier game that requires millions of dollars in funding to go build. And I'm wondering if just over the next few years, even the term indie kind of goes away, because
I think you're right.
It just becomes a game. Yeah. And a game that 3 people are going to go build is probably have different ambitions than a game that 30 people are going to go build. And hopefully, as we talked about earlier, when you're promoting your game, you're talking about the features that you're going to build based on your capability as a team, right? And I think that's where game preview and greenlight and other things can help.
Do you look back, like, considering where you are now, sort of take a second, I mean, do you look back and think, oh my God, we've come far? I mean, you guys have come so far. What was it recently? Like, you're the #1 selling console in the States, I think, in August.
Yeah.
And at the beginning, that was like, in
the beginning, we were not.
And then 2013, it was like,
we weren't.
I sort of can't even, I couldn't even fathom that. But you've really come a long way. Do you sort of look back? I mean, obviously there's still a lot of work to do, and we'll move on to the future. But do you sort of look back and go, "Wow, we've done a lot in a short space of time"?
I appreciate you asking that. The team at Xbox, we call it Team Xbox, really
good name.
Creative on a name.
It's very Australian,
much like the happy hour. But the team has been so dedicated to the product and the customer. And I remember when I first took the job, one of the first things we did is we had what we call an all-hands meeting. So we brought everybody in, it's like 4,000 people or something, and sat in a big hall in Bellevue. And the team was in pain. Like, I literally had people coming up visibly emotional, because this is a product that they invested years of their life in building. And through some actions and words and decisions, it wasn't anything that they did, but the product was not only not, it's like there's a selling side of it, but it's just, do gamers trust us? There was a question on who we were and why we were doing what we were doing. And I knew the first thing I had to do in taking the new job was to get the team to believe in who we were. Like, and that's not an outside thing, that's an inside thing as a team. Do we really trust ourselves? Why do we make these kind of decisions? Or is there some kind of other ulterior motive that's going on? Because sometimes it was hard to put the puzzle pieces together. And the work the team's done over the last 2 years, I get way too much credit for stuff that's happened on Xbox. I'm purely like this figurehead person that sits in front of a camera for happy hours and kind of, no, literally.
Cheers.
I mean, because there are there are developers in the middle of the UK doing Sea of Thieves. There's other teams in the middle of the UK shipping Forza Horizon 3, which is an amazing game. There's the platform team. There's great PR people who you can't see on the camera, but they're right here, who are helping us go kind of tell our story. Yeah, don't you say anything. And it's really been great. The success I see right now, it's not really relative to somebody else, but just the success I see in the product that's out there and how the fans were here for FanFest and they're so passionate and just so great, kind of hugging us and doing those things. That's the stuff that means the most. And so yeah, it feels great where we are now. It feels great. The team did that work, and it's the thing that gives me the most confidence about the future is that passion and capability of the team. And I feel great about it. I feel very lucky to be where I am and working with this team. And it's great that the customers are reacting to what we're building.
Well, let's touch on the future.
Sorry.
Oh no, Luke, go ahead.
Sorry,
go
just
ahead.
one thing I should mention there when you're saying you're meeting the fans and you're getting snaps, and I'm seeing them on my Twitter and all that kind of stuff. Is that, and I think you sort of touched on it originally when you're saying, I basically can't really believe what I'm doing now. Is that kind of crazy? Because I couldn't tell you the name of the man or woman who runs, I don't know, Universal Music.
Right.
Or some record label that I care about.
It's Jason.
Right. Is it? Good on him. And yet, you get on stage for these keynotes and that sort of stuff, and it's not just sort of isolated to Microsoft. It's the same goes for Nintendo and Sony.
Yeah.
They wheel out these personalities that talk about.
We get wheeled out.
Yeah,
I didn't actually walk into
Like
the chair.
Hannibal-
They pushed me.
He was brought in like Hannibal Lecter. We had to take off his.
I'm actually just the head.
Yeah.
It's just a mannequin.
But that gamers gravitate towards and recognize and want to get a snap with you.
Yeah.
Is that kind of surreal?
Yeah.
Or do you get used to it?
No. On my Twitter handle, I write this kind of corny phrase that says I'm kind of defined more by what I do than who I am, and I don't actually know where that comes from, but to me, it's
sounds
just
deep.
And it's like Xbox fans love the head of Xbox. I happen to be the head of Xbox now. I won't be the head of Xbox forever. They love the brand. They love what we're doing with the product. And what you talk about, and at least the way I hear it, is like I understand it's not me, right? I'm the lucky person that happens to have the job for the product that they love so much, and you can't let it become about you. And I think if for me, that's something I think about a lot. I know when I'm not doing this job, the @XboxP3 Twitter handle will be kind of the sagebrush blowing around, and that's cool, right? That's what it's about. And I'm always I was at the Brazil game show last year, and 300,000 Brazilians, and it was cool mayhem. But people are passionate about the games and what they're doing, and the same thing here with FanFest. It is a little surreal, but the people are so genuine and so friendly that instantly it kind of turns into just gamers talking about games like this. And that's special, and you can't let it turn into something else, right? It is just that, and that's I think I'll look back at this time once I'm not doing this, and I think it'll be professionally, one of definitely the most rewarding part of my career.
Yeah, right.
Okay, quickly moving on to the future. Now, Phil, since Project Scorpio was announced at E3 in June, I have been dying to get in front of you to ask this.
Okay.
Is it a Simpsons reference?
No.
Oh, god damn it.
No, totally not.
I was so sure. I was so sure.
No.
Where did you? I mean, can you talk about where you got it from?
I can't.
It's not a Bond.
No.
Is it Bond?
No.
God.
No. That one's a secret. That one's going down.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Where did Natal come from?
Natal I can't talk about. So Alex Kipman, people
Yeah.
might know, is one of the earlier creators of Natal, is Brazilian. Natal is a city in Brazil. So we had Project Natal, which was Connect. If you remember, you might have heard the leak codename Fortaleza about HoloLens. Happens to be another city in Brazil. So those projects, the code names kind of came around Alex's Brazilian background and the association. So that's where those came from. But have I ever said the code name for Xbox One S?
No.
This is a funny story. I'm going to
let's
say
hear
it.
it.
They're all like, oh, here we go.
Yes.
So one of the things we did before E3 is, and actually way before E3, is we were bringing in third parties to give us feedback on both Xbox One S and Scorpio. And we had a different code name for Xbox One S, which I will say, even though the PR doesn't like it when I say it. But I remember, so they were giving us feedback like on the design of Xbox One S and the spec capability of what we were going to do with Scorpio and what they needed in order to hit 4K, and we were getting some great feedback from them. But I remember sitting with Todd Howard, who runs Bethesda, people know Fallout, Skyrim, and we showed him finally what Xbox One S was going to look like, and the code name for Xbox One S was Edmonton, which is just a city in Canada. Mm-hmm. And he looks at me and he says, "That is the most lame code name I've heard." And Todd and I are friends, we go back a long time. But the only reason I tell you this is because he didn't know the code name for Scorpio yet. And then we unveiled the specs and what we were doing with Scorpio to him. And this is before E3, well before E3, all this stuff. And then he looks at me and he said, "No, that's a code name." Like that the code name was gonna dig, and I love the fact that Todd was there and like, that was the thing he was not fixated on. But he just thought Edmonton was such a lame code name for Xbox One S. The thing I love right now is like the Xbox One S is selling incredibly well, like you said. And he actually did just send me a piece of mail yesterday. He was congratulating me on Forza Horizon because he liked Forza a lot. And remember, we put the Fallout car in Forza Motorsport, if you remember. Yeah. So like we do a lot of work with them. We were supporting mods for Fallout and stuff. But he was congratulating, and then at the end he was congratulating me for how Xbox One S is doing. I'm going to respond calling it Edmonton. So don't let him see this before I do that. I say, yeah, Edmonton's selling really well. I'm glad.
It's going off.
Like the Great White North.
I love
Sorry,
it.
that's probably only funny to me.
This is what the happy hour is for.
Okay.
Is to hear these stories.
For me to tell funny stories. That
Yeah,
make me laugh.
I guess it's maybe funnier for like if you're in Canada. But if you're, I don't know what the equivalent of Edmonton is here, like Rudy Hill.
So Edmonton happens to be where
BioWare is.
Ah, okay.
So if you've ever visited BioWare, I wouldn't say it's a big metropolitan area.
Yeah.
But it is on the map.
Yeah.
Right? So it's an area. But
The Xbox Parramatta.
no, actually, code names, we run into issues when we pick names that if they happen, like if you named it Bond, you mentioned Bond earlier. Like if you had a code name Bond, you actually end up in trouble if that goes out publicly because the IP holders say, hey, you can't use that. So we have to pick kind of generic things.
Phil, I will say this one thing. I know a fact about Edmonton.
You do?
I do.
The city.
The city.
Okay.
Drop it, Lucy.
So Edmonton is where the biggest roller coaster accident happened in the world.
That's sad.
That's so grim.
Well, it's the facts that I know.
No longer the happy hour.
I just thought I'd throw it out there.
Man.
We're going to edit that.
We'll edit that out. No, we won't. Anyway, okay, Scorpio. So
Yes.
you guys obviously dropped that today. Not today. At E3 this year,
Yes.
you dropped that, and it was
Yeah.
huge. It was huge, and obviously it's still
Were you
very.
guys at E3?
I was.
Yes,
Yeah.
we were sitting there and watched the
So
announcement.
you were at the briefing?
We were at the briefing.
Thank you.
I tuned
yes.
out after Horizon 3.
Yeah,
I was
did you?
just like buzz.
Yeah.
Everything was a blur after that.
And one thing that I'm really interested in about, basically about your whole sort of future vision, and this includes the whole Xbox family, right? Is that you're not positioning the Scorpio as the Xbox One 2, or it's not the sequel. It's just another.
It's a member of the Xbox
It's
One
a member
family.
of the Xbox One family.
Yeah.
Do you think that we are at the end of the sort of iterative console generation where it is 1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and 5?
Honestly, I don't know. I wish I could give you a more insightful answer than that. I have seen through like the 360 back compat and people being able to continue to play the games that they love. When we launched the Xbox One, the investment people are making in Xbox One S now, I knew we had the capability to do Scorpio without causing you to rebuy the games that you want to go play.
Yeah.
And yet we could still unlock the capability so that developers can get the highest performance they can out of Scorpio. And obviously we're Windows. We see a lot of people building on Windows. We're building now all our games on Windows. And developers on Windows have built for scaling architecture for years. This is what you do. You have a minimum spec, a recommended spec. You kind of have your uncapped frame rate. Just go and drive it as fast as you can. So when we looked at our console, we didn't have to say, go put all your old console in a shoebox and throw it in the closet and reset up with something new. We can do Scorpio and make it a member of the family so your controllers work, your games work. It's just the newer version and the more powerful version of either what you already have or what's been in market. How that goes forward, kind of your question, I don't know. I can say I really love the idea of people being able to continue to play their games. Like, I think it's just this, our art form of game creation is at a point now where there's games that were created years and years ago that still mean something, still have something to share, still have something to teach both creators and gamers. And I don't love that when my Atari Jaguar dies, I have no way to play Tempest 2000 anymore, right? I think those are things that I don't want to have happen. And so I'm going to try to say that we'll always build consoles that can play the games that you want to go play. Do we know that we're going to be able to do that? Like, would we have the plan already all set up? We have the how it will work, but we'll have to let it play out in market.
Beyond the sort of, for those sort of still intrigued by the Scorpio.
Yeah. Did you like the announce?
Like myself.
Yeah?
Yeah.
You didn't think it was crazy? Like, tell me the truth.
What, the announce at the conference?
We did we opened the show with the S announce, closed the show with the Scorpio announce. You didn't think that was...
No, I mean, I think that you guys, it was a real shame that you had so many leaks. That was awful. And I like a good surprise. I'm never that stoked when something is leaked at like a day ahead of the announcement. It's like, oh, come on, guys. Like, oh yeah, 24 hours, well done, what a score.
Because you journalists with your precision questioning, we're like, no, and then
just damning our whole people. But no, I thought that the Scorpio announce was great. I think that, I speak for a lot of us when I say that we're very intrigued by it and we don't really know beyond, I guess, the resolution and the true 4K gaming promise, what Scorpio is.
Yeah.
So I guess my question is, what is the promise beyond 4K gaming, or is really that's what it is for those who have upgraded their TVs and want to move forward? And
so the design spec for us when we started looking at hardware iterations right after I took this job, and the Xbox One S. I mean, building a slim version of the console you have in market is not new. We didn't invent that. So we knew we were going to go do that. We actually didn't know with the S that we were going to end up putting the 4K Blu-ray drive in, and that 4K would reach more mainstream than we thought it would. So we didn't know if this was going to be a Scorpio only thing. And we ended up with a lot of 4K capability in the S that maybe I wouldn't have guessed we would have at the beginning. But it's nice. The upscaling, the 4K Netflix, the Blu-ray drive, the HDR stuff for games and movies.
So
it's good. Yeah, so that worked out well.
oh, can I just also give you a little bit of a fist bump for getting rid of the power pack?
The brick.
The brick.
Yes.
And you know what else I love? Only because I set it up the other day to play Forza with HDR. And it's funny because you came in with a new phone the other day and you're talking about, it's not a button anymore.
Yeah, it's like
yeah, but it's gone the opposite way with the Xbox. So you don't just brush up and it turns it on.
That's why we did
it's an
that.
actual button.
Yeah.
Perfect.
No, that was a discussion. We got to that. There were a couple of discussions we had about certain design things that were bugging me.
So I can't believe Apple are going the other way. I'm like, you idiots.
Look at these guys.
You want the button.
You want a real button.
Yeah,
Buttons feel good. They actuate. They let you know. They
Yeah.
make a noise. It's all that stuff is good. You kind of know when you actually click on it.
What do they know?
But we started on the Scorpio because we were doing our PC versions of our games, and we could see the games running at 4K on PC because the graphics cards there and stuff can support it, and you could see a visible difference. And we're talking to TV manufacturers like we do all the time, and they really thought that 4K TVs were going to be something that would get to mainstream pricing sooner than most people thought. And they didn't think it would be a thing like 3D TVs that kind of came and went and didn't really reach a market. I think we're seeing that now. Like if you go into a store, it's almost not impossible not to buy one, but the price points, the 4K TVs have really come down in price.
Come down, yeah.
So we picked that we want to be able to run the Xbox One games that we have today at 4K, at the same frame rate they're running at now. That was just a design spec, not something we were going to force. So you've got Forza Motorsport 6 that runs at 1080p 60. We said, okay, we want that to be able to run at 4K 60. You've got Gears of War that does 60 and 30 for multiplayer, and okay, well, that should be able to run at 4K. That was the design spec that we picked. What developers will actually do with it is up to them. Like, I'm not going to go dictate that somebody has to hit this resolution or this frame rate. Developers will make the decision. Certain developers will use the extra power to boost frame rate. Other people will boost resolution. And I always think putting the kind of tools in the hands of the creators, and they will bring out the best. They're totally incented to build the best games that they can. And the 4K TV adoption and 4K on PC as being I won't call it a standard, but a design point for most of the PC games out there has really helped us.
Thoughts on HDR? How big of a deal is it really?
You know, I think we're early. We're early in video games. I watched Revenant the other day off of 4K Blu-ray. If you haven't seen it, it's like jaw-droppingly good because there's so many deep blacks and stuff. And actually on the HDR side, funny enough, I think actually the dark is almost more impressive to me than the light because black levels and stuff are really so important to that sense of depth and immersion to a scene.
So that bear fight is other level?
It's crazy.
Okay.
Yeah, it is crazy. I mean, I have no financial interest in selling Revenant 4K Blu-rays, but but it is totally a worthwhile experience. But I will say, HDR, we're early. And you have HDR10, you've got Dolby, you've got people out there, TVs. So I'm glad we're supporting it. We have it in Horizon. We've got 4K in Gears, NBA 2K shipped, and we're seeing more games that will support it over the fall, which is fantastic. I think as a way to really differentiate what a scene looks like in a game, it's going to be a couple years till studios are really figuring out how to get the most out of HDR. Just like early on in 360 or PS3, when people moved from SD to HD, it took them a while to really land what an HD game looks like. But I will say the high dynamic range, we've seen it in still photography for years. It does lead to a sense of depth and immersion in a scene that I think will be really, really important in gaming.
Okay, it's just a hard thing to demonstrate. I think it's just going to have to rely on word of mouth and people just coming around and seeing stuff, and because you can't just like, I mean, we're seeing it in the press. It's like, hey, we've seen it in HDR, and here's the comparison, and you can't see either because you're watching it on your phone or.
Yeah, I mean, Gears, they actually have a demo mode that they will show, and maybe we'll see it because I know you're going to see some Gears later. Yeah. Where they split the screen in half on the game, and you can see the HDR side and the non-HDR side. And you almost feel like maybe you want to ship that feature. I mean, it's kind of a demo feature. But even like when we did the Halo 1 remake anniversary, and remember you could click and go, because you don't remember, I'll say how bad it looked. Right? So you had to give people the ability to go back to the old assets to say, oh, okay, I want to play in the new, or people like to reminisce in the old. But I agree with you. I think over time, you have to get your hands on it. And it makes us think about, well, how do you stream E3 this year?
Right.
Because you want to be able to show the assets, and the highest streaming 4K is not easy. In the stores, I want to make sure, our Microsoft stores, we have a 4K television there that supports HDR so people can see what's happening. Because I do think it's one of those things that people have to get their hands on, either from their friends or retailers or online.
I have a very, very important final question that'll probably have the Xbox PR folk running for the hills once they hear it. Have you ever considered tattooing a big game announcement on your body like Peter Moore?
I can't.
Or would you take it up a notch and reveal the Scorpio console design with a nipple piercing?
That's a doozy. I didn't see
that. Is it or? Is there another or? Do I get another or? It's either. That's a good hypothetical. Just because you brought up Peter, and Peter's a good friend of mine.
Right.
I thought, I've learned so much from Peter in the way he represents EA, the way he represented Microsoft, before that Reebok, and even Patrick way back in the day. A really good friend, and he pulled off that Halo. I don't think anybody can touch that Halo thing, right? You cannot. And I know there's a little bit of like a debate out there. Was it real? Did somebody pencil that on? I'm not getting any part of that into that, but I'll say that Peter is a real good friend, somebody that's been important to this industry for years, a great showman, and not in kind of a fake way, but a real genuine way. And I think he forever has to own the gun show that was the Halo announce.
It's beautiful.
Hey, can I ask you one final question?
Yeah, absolutely.
How many T-shirts do you own? Because here's the thing, right?
One.
I saw My wife shared this thing on Facebook with me a while ago, and it was this meme, and it was how many t-shirts I own, and it's 100. How many t-shirts I wear? 5. How many t-shirts am I willing to get rid of? None.
There is that.
Yeah.
There is. I have a lot of t-shirts. I get a lot of gaming t-shirts. I know there's certain people ask me, like, how do you decide what t-shirt you're going to wear today? I honestly, like, my Recourse shirt that I'm wearing today was on top of the stack.
Yeah.
That was it. I just pulled it.
I can sympathize with that. Yeah.
At E3, what shirt I wear. I mean, maybe in closing, the first, it started when I wore a Jumpman t-shirt. And most people have no idea. Jumpman, what is that? Like Epix Games. This is an old Commodore 64 game that I used to play with my dad. And E3 was right around Father's Day, and I knew I was going to be on stage, and I knew he was going to watch it. So I wore the Jumpman shirt as just kind of representing that, as I started earlier, that he was the person that really got me into video games, and I wanted to stand there on stage and represent that. And I got a piece of mail back from like Old School Gamers or something, and they said, really cool Jumpman shirt. I thought that was cool. And since that point, it's kind of been a thing that I do when I'm really proud of work that a team's done. When State of Decay had sold 1 million units, I wore their shirt, Dead Labs. And you know, this is my Recourse shirt because Recourse out, didn't quite get the review scores I wanted it to get. I know the team was a little bummed by that. I'm having a great time playing it, and I'm very proud of that game, both who the characters are in the game and the way the game plays. So I'm wearing the Recourse shirt because I like the game, and Inafune-san and the team at Armature did a great job, and I'm going to represent what they did because I'm proud of it.
Right on.
Awesome. All right, well, that is a great place to wrap up. Phil, thank you so much for joining us on our IGN happy hour, where I was the only one who actually drank any alcohol.
I at least
didn't get me a
consumed
beer.
some liquid. I did consume some liquid.
You can't just come downstairs with one beer. That's just rude.
You know.
Oh.
Luke, thank you as always.
Thank you, Lucy.
And we'll see you next time. Keep it
thanks
locked
for
to
having me.
IGN.